Mr. President.
Senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, I appreciate that Senator Cantwell organized this time for a group of us to come and talk about this disastrous, insane plan to drill throughout 90% of our coastal shelf. This, the Interior Secretary tells us, is part of President Trump's directive to rebuild offshore oil and gas programs. But he also conveyed that it was the President's directive to, quote, take into consideration the local and state voices. Well, certainly the draft plan, if you can call it a draft, didn't take into account local or state voices. Had the Interior Secretary bothered to actually consult, this is what he would have heard from people in Oregon. Our governor, Kate Brown, denounced the plan, saying, in what universe would this be okay? Noah Oppenheim, the executive director of the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations, stated, quote, the Trump administration wants to put fish and fisheries at significant risk while lining the pockets of oil industry co-conspirators. Meanwhile, more frequent oil spills, more intense ocean acidification, and ocean warming are guaranteed to ensue. Charlie Plybon, the Oregon policy manager at Surfrider Foundation, an organization made up of everyday people passionate about protecting our oceans and our beaches, shared this opinion, quote, we're united in an understanding of the threats which offshore oil drilling poses to our coastal economy, jobs, and culture. We will not gamble our ocean resources with dangerous oil exploration and polluting drilling activities that put our future and that of generations to come at risk. And Charlie went on to convey the enormous disparity between the economy that is driven by fishing and ocean recreation and by tourism as compared to the economy driven by oil drilling, and how the former completely outweighs the latter. The Association of Northwest Steelheaders is one of the oldest and most cherished conservation and sport fishing advocacy organizations in the Pacific Northwest. Their statement is the following: this proposal stands to go against everything we believe in. Drilling for oil and gas off the coast of Oregon compromises our fisheries, our coastal economies, and our values. These folks know what they're talking about. And the tribes weighed in through the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. Their resolution conveys, quote, any proposal to open Pacific offshore waters from California to and including Alaska to offshore drilling. Scott McMullen, the chairman of the Oregon Fishermen's Cable Committee, a group of troll fishermen who have been very involved in negotiations involving the fiber optic cable lines that are laid in the ocean, said, the Oregon fishing industry has had a long history of good stewardship of the fishing grounds, which are open for multiple uses. Oil platforms in our fishing grounds would deny access to resources that fishermen, fish processors, and thriving coastal communities depend on. To take away the right to use our historical shared fishing grounds by awarding drilling rights for this single industrial use is wrong. Dale Beasley had this opinion. As president of the Columbia River Crab Fishermen's Association and the Coalition of Coastal Fisheries, our position on any fixed structures in the ocean, and particularly oil platforms, is simple. No, no, and no again. Our members rely 100% on clean, sustainable marine waters for 100% of our family's income. Terry Thompson, Lincoln County Commissioner, stated the state of Oregon has been a leader in the nation in terms of protecting our environment while responsibly using our natural resources. We banned oil and gas development 3 years ago because of the potential risk to our ocean, which is one of the most productive places in the world. The President's proposal to allow oil and gas development is an attempt to override the will of the people and shows a complete disconnect between this administration and the people of the West. I think that these voices, the voices of the crabbing industry and the salmon industry and the fishing industry, the tourism industry, these voices of the coastal economy reverberate in absolute parallel and passionate opposition to drilling off our coast for oil. You know, before the drilling takes place, there's massive amounts of explosions that are conducted in order to create the maps of what is under the surface for potential drilling. That alone, just the preparation for drilling, is deeply disturbing. But imagine what an oil spill looks like. This is a map of the Washington and Oregon coast with the outline overlaid of the Gulf oil spill. It covers a section that is the entire length of the state of Oregon and the state of Washington. Imagine those hundreds of miles of soiled beaches, the oil's impact on the ecosystem of the fisheries. There is no way that this risk is justified for pumping a few more barrels of oil, which I might point out should be left in the ground anyway, because burning oil that we are extracting from the ground is steadily raising the temperature of the planet and the temperature of our oceans, which absorb the vast majority of the heat from burning fossil fuels. And that is creating changes from ocean acidification, the bleaching of the coral reefs, and all kinds of impacts on the surface of the continents. So I say to the Interior Secretary, you have been given a mission by the President of the United States, and you have stated that that is to take into consideration local and state voices. So simply hear those voices, and then take Oregon out of the equation. Take Washington out of the equation. Take California out of the equation. Take every state that objects out of this equation. And by the way, it'd be wise to take the rest out as well. Thank you, Mr. President.